The worst day of my life didn't come until 3 weeks before Michael left, when my oncologist uttered those dreaded words. "I'm sorry, Emily. It's stage 3 breast cancer." But as I watched Michael walk out with a hastily packed suitcase, it dawned on me just how isolated a person could truly feel. I found myself sitting on the bathroom floor, my head resting against the cool porcelain of the toilet. The waves of nausea from my second chemo treatment crashed over me like a relentless storm, leaving me hollow and consumed by pain. I heard his footsteps approaching in the hallway, initially hesitant, then resolute. "I can't do this anymore, Emily." His voice seemed detached, as though he had already checked out. I lacked the strength to lift my head, my fingers gripping the toilet bowl's edge with white knuckles. "To what?" I managed to ask, though deep down I already knew. His vague gesture towards me, as if my cancer was some inconvenience I had caused, indicated the end of our relationship. I thought I could handle it, but I can't. I'm just not built for this. For the past 5 years, I wore a diamond ring on my finger that suddenly felt too heavy to bear. Wedding plans were postponed when the diagnosis came, and now this, you're leaving me. My voice was a rasp, throat raw from vomiting. I said, "I've arranged for your sister to come stay. She'll be here in an hour." So practical, so completely removed. It felt as if he was canceling a subscription service. I managed to look up at him from my weakened state. Michael stood in the doorway, his tall frame blocking the light. Once I found safety in his shadow, now it felt like being trapped in darkness. "You talked to my sister before talking to me about leaving?" I asked. He had the decency to look away. "I didn't know how to tell you," he admitted. I let out a bitter laugh, a horrible sound that made my chest ache. "Well, congratulations. You found a way." He set his house key on the counter, the sound of metal against marble echoing in my head like a gunshot. "I'll send for the rest of my things later. I need space to think." I wanted to scream, to throw something, but the words remained unspoken. I wished for him to feel just a fraction of the agony consuming me, but even that was stolen by chemo. I lacked the strength for anger. "Go then," I muttered softly. He hesitated, perhaps anticipating me to plead for him to stay or seek forgiveness. I offered neither. As the front door shut, I dragged myself to the bedroom, hoisting myself onto our bed, now just mine, and wept until there were no tears left. My once full locks now fell out in clumps, a new bald spot near my temple a cruel reminder. Slowly, I vanished bit by bit. The irony stung. We were the ideal couple on paper. College sweethearts, both excelling in our respective careers. Me in publishing, him in finance. Our beautifully renovated Boston brownstone was a testament to our years of shared labor. Our friends admired our relationship, our effortless connection, our seemingly unbreakable bond. But cancer lays bare the truth about people, about relationships. It mercilessly strips away facades like chemo strips away cells, both healthy and diseased. My sister Jessica arrived exactly when Michael said she would. One look at my face and she knew. "That absolute bastard," she whispered, dropping her bags and rushing to my side. I knew something was off when he called, but I didn't think. He couldn't handle it," I said, my voice hollow. My cancer was too inconvenient for his life plan. Jessica held me, fierce and protective. "Then he doesn't deserve to be part of your life, any of it." That night, between bouts of nausea and pain, I found Michael's contact page on my phone. My finger hovered over the delete button, but something stopped me. Not hope, not love, something darker, something I wasn't ready to name yet. I closed my eyes, remembering how he promised to be by my side in sickness and in health when he proposed on a snowy night last December. We hadn't made it to the altar, but he made the promise all the same. 3 days later, while Jessica was out getting my prescriptions, I saw it on social media. Michael was at a rooftop bar with Vanessa, his coworker, his arm draped around her. Despite his reassurances that she was just a friend, whenever I felt uneasy, my insecurities persisted. The photo's timestamp showed it was from the night he had left, not even having waited 24 hours. I gazed at his carefree smile, seemingly untouched by the pain he had caused me. As my phone slipped from my grasp and hit the floor, I made a silent vow to myself. I knew, with sudden defiance, that I would survive this and Michael would one day realize the enormity of what he had lost. The following 8 months blurred together, a whirlwind of hospital rooms, painful needle pricks, and excruciating suffering that seemed to take on a life of its own within me. My world shrank to blood test results and the slow administration of chemicals intended to eradicate the rebellious cells invading my body. Jessica stood by me for the first 3 months until her work called her back to Chicago. However, I found solace in a reliable circle of friends who stepped in to support me, including understanding colleagues who, receiving organized meal deliveries and regular calls from Michael's mother, Eleanor, became a routine in my life. During one of our conversations, Eleanor expressed her love for her son, Michael, but also condemned his actions towards me. Despite my reluctance to hear more about Michael's life, Eleanor revealed that he had swiftly moved in with Vanessa just 2 months after leaving. Together, they resided in a luxurious penthouse in the financial district, a place we had once dreamed of living in. Eleanor insisted on sharing these details with me, emphasizing the importance of knowledge. Each revelation about Michael's new life stirred up a mix of pain and understanding within me, shattering my idealized perception of our relationship. It was evident that he had been seeking an escape, and my illness had conveniently provided him with the opportunity to leave while portraying himself as a victim. Instead of positioning oneself as a perpetrator of cruelty, view oneself as a casualty of circumstances. One Tuesday afternoon, amidst medical treatments, I unexpectedly encountered Sarah, a common friend who had been avoiding me following the breakup. She appeared shocked upon seeing me in the coffee shop, my head wrapped in a silk scarf and my physique notably slimmer. "Emily," she stammered, "you look vibrant," I offered. She seemed taken aback. "No, I've been meaning to reach out for 8 months." Keeping my composure, I replied, "Don't fret. I've come to understand where allegiances lie." Sarah's eyes welled up with tears. "It's not what you think. It's complex. Cancer is complex. Chemotherapy is complex. Betrayal, on the other hand, is quite straightforward." As I gathered my belongings to depart, Sarah clasped my wrist. "There's something important you should know." Glancing around the cafe, she whispered, "Michael had been involved with Vanessa for at least 6 months before your diagnosis. His colleagues were aware. In that moment, the world seemed to tilt. 6 months, half a year spent in deceit. It wasn't just a sudden exit, but a carefully calculated departure using my cancer diagnosis as a convenient cover. Sarah revealed that he had been intending to leave regardless. When you felt ill, he confided in some of us that he felt trapped and couldn't abandon a woman with cancer without seeming heartless. I couldn't help but burst out laughing, drawing the attention of other patrons. But in reality, that's exactly what he did, Sarah admitted, looking down in shame. She couldn't bring herself to face the truth or inform you about his true intentions. That night, I found myself sitting on the bathroom floor not due to illness, but by choice. The chilling tiles beneath me helped to anchor my thoughts as I came to terms with this harsh reality. Michael didn't just walk away from me, he had been plotting his escape while I was still dreaming of our future together. In a moment of resolve, I reluctantly opened my laptop and searched for Vanessa's social media profiles. There she was, exuding beauty and sophistication in every carefully curated post. Feed brimmed with scenes of power lunches and glamorous outings. A stark contrast to the deceit and betrayal that had unraveled before my eyes. Charity galas and recent vacation photos from the Maldives appeared glowing and triumphant in every picture with Michael. As I scrolled back further, I came across photos from before my diagnosis, where they were captured in group settings, standing a bit too close, his hand resting on the small of her back at an office party. The signs had been there all along, hidden in plain sight. 2 weeks later, my oncologist shared news that should have filled me with pure joy. My cancer was responding well to treatment. The tumors were shrinking. My body was fighting back. "This is excellent progress," Dr. Chen exclaimed with a smile. "You're not completely in the clear, but we're on the right path." Despite the positive news, I felt a bittersweet victory. Who could I confide in that this new hope was intertwined with thoughts of Michael, realizing that I was progressing while he was moving forward without me? Later that evening, a package arrived from Ellen. Inside was a silver necklace with a simple pendant, "Phoenix rising from the ashes. For note read, for when you. Be prepared to overcome, my dear, and overcome you shall." I placed the necklace around my neck, my fingers shaking. The metal felt cool against my skin, a reminder that I was still present, still able to feel, still determined to persevere. The following day, I received an email that sent shivers down my spine. It was a wedding invitation not directly sent to me, but forwarded by a mutual friend who believed I had a right to know. Michael and Vanessa were set to marry in 6 months at the Boston Harbor Hotel, a place where Michael and I had once discussed having our own celebration. As I read the details of the invitation on my screen, my reaction was detached. Black tie attire, open bar, fireworks display over the harbor at midnight. Just then, my phone rang. "Jessica, have you seen it?" Came Jessica's voice without introduction. "Yes," I replied, feeling distant from my own words. The audacity of him to get married before your treatment is even completed. I absentmindedly traced the phoenix pendant at my neck. Actually, Jess, I think his timing is quite fitting. What do you mean? She inquired. I responded, feeling. A determination stirred within me, hard and bright, signaling that I needed precisely 6 months to ready myself. Prepare for what? She asked cautiously. Peering at my reflection in the window, I saw a thin, pale figure with a newfound fire in my eyes that had been absent for almost a year. To kickstart the beginning of the rest of my life, I had devoted everything to him, my trust, my future, my faith through the darkest of times. Yet he had callously discarded me as though I meant nothing. But now, I was on the cusp of revealing to Michael what he had carelessly cast aside. On the day I completed my final chemotherapy session, I refrained from immediate celebration. Parking in the hospital lot, I sat in my car for nearly an hour, allowing the reality to sink in. I had triumphed, not solely over cancer, but also the shattering of the life I had envisioned. Running my fingers over the soft new hair sprouting on my head, now darker, a striking silver streak at my temple, an emblem since my diagnosis, I drove home and crafted a plan. More than just a list, it was a blueprint. The first order of business: reconstruct my body. The effects of chemotherapy had left me weakened. My body had lost its strength, energy, and resilience that I once took for granted. Seeking help, I enlisted the expertise of a personal trainer specializing in post-cancer recovery named Margot. Margot didn't offer quick fixes, but instead promoted steady progress. Your body has been through a lot, she reminded me during our initial session. You must respect that as we work towards rebuilding your strength. Committing to 3 sessions a week at her studio, the journey was both challenging and empowering. Despite days of struggle and frustration, there were also moments of achievement, like the first time I held a 30-second plank or woke up feeling refreshed without the usual fatigue. Another priority on my list was financial independence. The cost of treatment had significantly depleted my savings, and medical bills continued to accumulate despite having insurance. Taking time off from my publishing job during the treatment phase had further strained my finances. It was now essential for me to focus on rebuilding my financial stability. Reaching out to an old colleague who had ventured into a new venture, I began to explore potential opportunities for generating income. Rita offered me the opportunity to work for her literary agency from home on my own schedule. I mentioned that I wasn't able to take on a full workload just yet, and Diane immediately offered me the chance to evaluate manuscripts on a project basis at my own pace. This arrangement provided me with a steady stream of work that kept me mentally engaged and focused, complementing the physical therapy I was undergoing for my recovery. It became clear to me that I needed a change of scenery, as the memories associated with my brownstone were too overwhelming. I decided to sell it, setting an aggressive price that attracted a young family who quickly fell in love with the property. With the sale finalized, I shared with the real estate agent that I was moving to Beacon Hill, where I found a charming apartment in a historic building close to Boston Common. It took almost all the money I received from my share of the brownstone sale. But the moment I set foot inside, I knew it was meant to be mine. Bathed in sunlight, with its original hardwood floors and tall windows, it felt like a fresh start from the home I once shared with Michael. That was precisely the reason I chose it. This was the 4th item on my list, one that I had kept off the record and not shared with anyone, not even Jessica. It was about reconnecting with Tom. Tom Whitman had been Michael's college roommate, but their friendship had soured in their senior year due to a betrayal of trust. Though Michael never fully explained what had transpired, he mentioned how they had drifted apart. I had met Tom only once at an alumni gathering in the early days of my relationship with Michael. I remembered his quiet intelligence, his genuine warmth, and how uneasy Michael seemed in his presence. Tracking down Tom was a challenge. He had become a successful corporate attorney with his professional headshot and contact details prominently displayed on his Boston firm's website. The true challenge was composing the email I eventually sent 3 months after my final chemotherapy treatment. You may not recall me, but I need your insights on Michael, which only you can provide. His prompt response reassured me. Tomorrow evening, we convened at a discreet wine bar in Cambridge, away from Michael's workplace. Tom, unchanged from my memory, greeted me with a composed expression that briefly betrayed surprise at my altered appearance. Thank you for meeting me, I expressed after we had ordered. I've wanted to connect, Tom confessed, uncertain if his gesture would be appreciated. Puzzled, I inquired why he hesitated. Swirling his wine thoughtfully, Tom explained, Michael excels at shaping narratives. I assumed he concocted a version of me that wouldn't make reaching out welcome. Tom had felt betrayed by him, but he never went into detail about it. Tom's laughter lacked humor as he questioned whether it was considered interesting. Seating himself, he held his glass. "What do you want to know, Emily?" "Everything," I inquired, but particularly what truly transpired between you two. Over the next hour, Tom divulged information that completely altered my perception of the man I had almost married. The betrayal stemmed from Tom's decision not to cover up Michael's infidelity during their college years. When Michael's girlfriend had suspicions and approached Tom for answers, he chose not to lie on behalf of his roommate. "That's it," I gasped. "You ended a friendship because you refused to assist him in deceiving someone?" "Michael doesn't forgive those who compromise his meticulously crafted facade," Tom explained. "However, there's more to the story." It turned out that Tom had stayed in touch with a few mutual friends from college. Through this network, he had learned about Michael getting engaged to me, then my battle with cancer, and eventually Michael's sudden departure. But there was something else he had heard. Mike Hale had been siphoning funds from client accounts at his firm by taking small amounts from various portfolios, believing it would go unnoticed due to its dispersed nature. The misconduct began approximately a year ago, coinciding with the start of his serious relationship with Vanessa, as mentioned by Tom. The extravagant purchases, such as the penthouse and vacation, seemed beyond what his salary could afford. As the realization sank in, Tom hesitated when asked about concrete proof. Although there was no definitive evidence to present to authorities, there were individuals within the firm who had noticed discrepancies, but were hesitant to speak up. Tom suggested that these individuals might be willing to come forward to someone like Emily, who was known in Boston's financial circles as the woman Hale had left while she was battling cancer. The reputation of this story had made its rounds, instigating a desire among certain individuals to see Hale face consequences both professionally and personally. Emily was entrusted with gathering the names of these colleagues who were willing to provide information. By the time Michael and Vanessa's wedding approached, Emily had acquired what she needed through discreet discussions with 3 of Michael's coworkers. I collected evidence of his financial misconduct from various women who had experienced his manipulations. While it wasn't enough for criminal charges, it was sufficient to prompt an internal investigation that could ruin his career. Additionally, I discovered that Vanessa was complicit in his actions, pursuing a relationship with him despite knowing he was engaged and benefiting from his ill-gotten gains. As part of my plan, I decided to acquire a special dress to symbolize my strength and resilience. After collaborating with a designer who understood my vision, I received a stunning emerald green gown tailored to perfection. The dress represented my transformation and featured intricate details, including a backless design revealing a delicate temporary tattoo I had chosen for the occasion. Nix had always worn the pendant that matched, never taking it off. Just a month before the wedding, Eleanor called with an invitation to the rehearsal dinner. "He's invited me," she said without any small talk. "I'm not sure I can handle it." "Then don't go," I suggested. "If I don't attend, I fear losing any connection to my son, flawed as he may be," she confessed. I understood her dilemma. "Then go," I encouraged. But Eleanor hesitated. "You might want to suddenly develop a migraine before the reception the next day," I hinted. "Emily, what do you have in mind?" she questioned. "Just be sure to leave the hotel by 9 p.m., I advised. "Trust me on this." As the wedding day drew near, I made my final preparations. I booked a room at the Boston Harbor Hotel for the night before the wedding. I treated myself to a professional hair and makeup artist, a luxury I had never indulged in before. I rehearsed my words, crafting them to be perfect, impactful, and unassailable. On the eve of Michael's wedding, I stood in my new apartment, gazing at my reflection in the full-length mirror. My hair had been styled into a chic short cut, and I was ready for what lay ahead. I had highlighted my cheekbones, showcasing a newfound inner strength that came from enduring challenges and surviving betrayal. As I caressed the Phoenix pendant around my neck, feeling its soothing silver against my skin, I whispered to my reflection, "Watch me rise." The Boston Harbor Hotel sparkled in the dimming light, its entrance glowing with warmth. The harbor water shimmered with strands of light set up for the special event. In the plush car service I had treated myself to, I observed guests entering the grand ballroom where Michael and Vanessa would soon celebrate. My driver, Patricia, a resilient breast cancer survivor in her 50s, glanced at me with a blend of kindness and concern. "You certain about this, dear?" she inquired. I smoothed the emerald fabric over my lap and replied, more certain than I'd ever been in my life. Patricia nodded reassuringly. "Then I'll be right here, motor running just in case." Zed her hand in appreciation as she exited into the crisp evening air. Approaching the ballroom entrance, a young man in a tuxedo checked names against the guest list. Ignoring him completely, I strode confidently past, exuding such determination that he assumed I was supposed to be there. Inside, the room had been beautifully decorated to match Michael and Vanessa's ideal vision of a wedding. White orchids spilled from crystal vases and champagne flowed from fountains positioned at each end of a polished bar. A string quartet played in one corner, their music nearly drowned out by the lively chatter of 300 guests celebrating the union of the finance world's golden couple. Quietly moving through the crowd, I encountered familiar faces from my past life, colleagues of Michael's who had attended our dinner parties, friends who had taken sides when he departed, and even distant relatives who had once welcomed me as part of their family. At first, no one recognized me. The physical changes brought about by cancer and its aftermath were apparent, but there was something deeper. I carried myself with a newfound strength and determination, evident in every step I took. That was a new sight for me. Eleanor stood near one of the champagne fountains, uneasy in a navy dress that appeared to restrict her movements. Catching sight of me, her eyes widened as she held a glass of champagne suspended halfway to her lips. I acknowledged her with a slight nod. She glanced at her watch, then towards the exit, and we shared a knowing look. She would be gone before the festivities, both literal and symbolic, commenced. The atmosphere in the room quieted as the wedding party was announced. Bridesmaids in soft blush hues, groomsmen in timeless black tie. Then, amidst cheers, Michael and Vanessa entered. Michael, unchanged in stature and classic good looks, exuded the certainty of a man who believed he was beyond consequences. Vanessa gleamed in an extravagant designer dress likely more costly than many people's vehicles, her dark hair fashioned into an elaborate updo adorned with diamonds. They appeared flawless together, yet lacking any true substance. As they took the spotlight, I moved through the room slowly, holding the champagne flute filled with water. The dinner service concluded with toasts made and secrets hidden within the glint of crystal and silver. As the first dance commenced, Michael led Vanessa in a meticulously orchestrated waltz to a song reminiscent of our wedding playlist. When the dance floor opened to all guests, I decided to take action. Positioning myself near the orchestra, I seized the moment between songs to approach the conductor with a quiet yet firm request. Surprised at first, he soon showed curiosity and gave a single nod. The next piece that filled the room was not the anticipated lively tune, but a poignant melody I had asked for, casting an unexpected melancholy over the atmosphere. Heads turned, the ambience subtly transformed. Stepping into the center of the dance floor, I stood alone yet poised. Conversations around me hushed as individuals began to take notice, starting with a few, then spreading to many, until finally the entire room was captivated. On the other side of the ballroom, Michael caught sight of me amidst his discussions with distinguished gentlemen donned in expensive attire, likely potential clients. His face paled, his movement halted midway as if unsure of his next step. Vanessa, noticing the change in atmosphere, turned to see what had caught his attention. Smile wavered, lips parting in confusion, recognition, and a hint of fear. I remained silent, simply standing there, allowing myself to be seen. The emerald dress sparkled in the light, giving me an ethereal glow. The music enveloped us, the haunting notes of the violin, almost as if it were a cry of a soul in distress. A path cleared as Michael slowly approached me, his face displaying a range of emotions from shock to anger to a forced attempt at compassion that didn't quite reach his eyes. Emily, he murmured as he reached me, his voice low as if trying to keep the situation contained. This is unexpected. I met his gaze head on. Did you think I would be taken by cancer, Michael, or just lose my spirit? His eyes flicked around, aware of the attention we were drawing. This isn't the appropriate setting. I disagreed. This is the perfect setting, I stated boldly, my voice firm. Steady and resolute, you walked away from me just 3 days after my second round of chemotherapy. You admitted that you weren't equipped to handle it. Can you recall the moment Vanessa appeared behind you, her hand possessively clasping your arm? Michael, what's going on? She questioned. I greeted her with a gentle smile. Hello, Vanessa. I'm Emily, the woman whose engagement ring was still warm when it found its place on your finger. Whispers spread through the onlookers. Someone began filming the exchange on their phone. Emily, you're causing a scene, Michael hissed, his public facade starting to crumble. You're only humiliating yourself. No, I'm honoring myself. There is a distinction, I replied with conviction. I turned slightly to address the growing audience that had gathered around us. Many of you knew me from a time before cancer reshaped my existence. Before I learned the true essence of loyalty through its absence. Michael's expression turned icy. Security called out. We have an unwelcome visitor. I won't be staying long, I reassured him. But before I leave, there are certain individuals here who might be interested in what I discovered. Your financial records had landed exactly as I'd intended. Michael's face went from flushed anger to ashen fear in an instant. You're confused, he said quickly. The medication from your treatments. I finished treatment 6 months ago, Michael. My mind is perfectly clear. I turned to face several senior partners from his firm who had gathered nearby, clear enough to notice discrepancies in client accounts dating back 14 months. Clear enough to document transfers that funded this wedding, that penthouse, those vacations. One of the partners, a silver haired man I recognized as the firm's founding partner, stepped forward. What exactly are you suggesting, young woman? I reached into the small clutch I carried and removed a sealed envelope. I'm not suggesting anything. I'm providing evidence. Names, dates, account numbers. I handed it to him directly. Everything validated by 3 current employees at your firm who were too afraid to come forward themselves. The ballroom had gone completely silent. The music of the orchestra fell silent. Michael snapped, his voice wavering. This is slander. A voice from behind me chimed in. She's delusional, actually. She's exactly right. Stepping forward in a sharp tuxedo, Tom made his entrance, impeccably timed for maximum impact. Tom Whitman. He introduced himself to the perplexed audience, corporate attorney. I spent the last month confirming Ms. Carson's findings. They're not just accurate, but they underestimate the true extent of the damage. Vanessa's hand gripped Michael's arm tightly, her knuckles turning white. Michael, what is he talking about? Michael, however, was not focused on his bride. Instead, he glared at me with a hatred that seemed almost tangible. Did this, he accused in a barely audible voice. You planned this. No, Michael, you did this. I'm simply making sure you can't bury it along with me, I answered, turning away to address the room for the last time. I didn't come here seeking revenge. I came to reclaim my dignity, to remind mine. I realized, along with everyone else, that survival means more than just breathing. It's about embracing your truth, even when it's uncomfortable or painful. As I made my way towards the exit, the crowd cleared a path for me, water party ways. In the midst of chaos behind me, partners confronting Michael, Vanessa distancing herself, guests pulling out phones to capture the unraveling of a once perfect facade. I glanced back one final time. Michael stood alone on the dance floor, his supposed fresh start crumbling before him, his meticulously crafted world falling apart in real time. Our eyes locked across the space between us. I felt nothing towards him in that moment. Not hatred, not love, not even pity, just a deep sense of my own value. Something his betrayal had once made me doubt. Stepping out into the night air, Patricia stood by the car with the door open. Mission accomplished? She inquired as I settled into the back seat. Through the window, I observed security rushing into the hotel guests. Egan spilled onto the sidewalk, his perfect wedding descending into perfect chaos. Let's head home, I suggested calmly. As we drove away, fireworks lit up the harbor, their beauty wasted on the disarray below. The aftermath played out like a slow motion domino effect. I observed from a distance, no longer a participant, but a bystander to the consequences set in motion long ago. I had crashed the wedding wearing an emerald dress. Michael was placed on immediate administrative leave by his firm pending an investigation. 3 weeks later, the investigation confirmed my revelations. Systematic embezzlement exceeding $2 million. Subsequent criminal charges ensued. With the help of his legal team, Michael agreed to a plea deal involving restitution and an 18-month term in a minimum security facility. Vanessa vanished from Boston society almost overnight. Through Eleanor, I discovered that she had returned to Chicago, maintaining her innocence regarding Michael's financial wrongdoings. Whether her claims were believed remained uncertain. After the wedding, Eleanor called me the morning after to discuss the events. She described it as both the most terrible and most magnificent thing she had ever witnessed. Without preamble, she inquired about my well being. To my surprise, I found myself responding truthfully that I felt better than all right, almost complete. Eleanor then shared, he was my son before he was your betrayer. She expressed her enduring love for him despite everything that transpired, acknowledging the sense of justice in my actions. Our Sunday calls continued, marking a gradual healing process and transformation in our relationship. Tom and I cultivated a friendship based on mutual respect rather than shared trauma. He respected my need for time to rebuild trust, not only in others but in myself as well. 3 months later, my oncologist revealed the news I had scarcely dared to hope for: complete remission. The absence of detectable cancer cells offered a glimmer of hope for the future. Despite the uncertainty that cancer brings, a once foggy future now appeared filled with endless possibilities. It was then that I made a decision. My manuscript garnered a positive reception as it delved into my journey of self reclamation, reaching a wide audience who identified with my story of loss and renewal beyond the specifics of cancer and betrayal. On the anniversary of the emotional confrontation at the wedding, I was surprised to receive a letter from Michael, penned on prison stationery. Contemplating whether to open it and risk revisiting a past I had painstakingly moved beyond, I eventually took the letter to the harbor on a serene autumn morning. Michael's words were not an apology or an accusation, but a nuanced acknowledgement of the emptiness that had plagued him long before my illness, driven by a need for validation from external sources. He made no pleas for forgiveness or offer excuses, instead, choosing to confront the reality of his actions. As I reflected on our relationship and the consequences facing him, the final paragraph resonated deeply with me. Observing you leave the ballroom, I saw you in a new light, not just as a mere extension of myself or an obstacle to overcome, but as a person of remarkable strength in your own right. I realized that I was unworthy of you, and witnessing your growth during my absence made me confront my own shortcomings. A mix of emotions surged through me as I carefully returned the letter to its envelope and then turned to my journal to pen a response, knowing it would remain unsent. Loving you was genuine, and losing you revealed my own strength. That pivotal night, clad in emerald silk, forever altered our destinies. However, I now rue the years spent seeking validation through your gaze, oblivious to the distorted reflection shaped by your limitations, not my own. These words were not intended for him. They were meant for. 6 months later, Tom and I enjoyed our inaugural date. We dined at a cozy Italian restaurant, a departure from the bustling financial district and the Boston Harbor Hotel. Our conversation spanned topics such as literature, his charitable efforts with a cancer support group, and the potential future that we could both envision without haste. As we indulged in tiramisu, I assured him that I wasn't seeking someone to rescue me. I had already taken charge of my own salvation.